Two former federal officials from Illinois are calling for a change in the way Illinois draws state legislative district maps. Former Commerce Secretary Bill Daley and former Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood join us on this edition of Capitol Cast. Hello and welcome to Capitol Cast, a regular podcast of Capitol News Illinois. I'm Peter Hancock. The national news has been full of headlines in recent weeks about efforts to redraw congressional district maps in a way that would benefit one party or another. It's a long-standing American tradition known as gerrymandering. But gerrymandering isn't confined to congressional maps. Many states do the same thing with their state legislative maps, and Illinois is certainly no exception. Republicans here have complained for years that Democratic majorities in the Illinois House and Senate here in Springfield are much larger than the party's actual support among voters would suggest. It all comes down to how maps are drawn. It's often said that redistricting is the only time when politicians get to choose their voters rather than the other way around. Now, two veteran public officials are stepping in to propose a state constitutional amendment that would change all that by putting the process in the hands of an independent commission rather than letting lawmakers draw their own maps. Bill Daley and Ray LaHood are here to talk about their plan. Mr. Daley served as Secretary of Commerce in the Clinton administration and was a former chief of staff. He comes out of the banking industry and is part of the legendary Democratic political family of Chicago. Mr. LaHood is a former Republican member of Congress who served as Secretary of Mr. LaHood is a former Republican member of Congress who served as Transportation Secretary in the Obama administration. He is also the father of current Republican Congressman Darren LaHood. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So we should start off by pointing out that this has been tried before in Illinois. Most recently in 2016, voters signed petitions to put a similar measure on the ballot, but it never got on the ballot. It was thrown off before voters had a chance to voice their opinion. The Illinois Supreme Court threw it out on technical grounds. So I want to start with you, Mr. Daley. Why do you think that this time around the effort will be more successful than it was a few years ago?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons, Peter. And I was involved in the 2016 effort to get fair maps in a process that would make the redistricting fair. The courts ruled that it was violative of the Illinois Constitution. Eventually, the Illinois Supreme Court did. We had a rather complicated process that we put forward to the voters if it had gotten on the ballot. What we learned from that, and looking at the Supreme Court decision and looking at prior cases, that we should simplify and not be as complicated as we became in 2016. We have a plan that's simple. We feel very confident that the courts will approve this. We get the petitions that'll get on the ballot or get through the courts, and the voters will vote it. Also, there's a makeup change in the Supreme Court, partly as a result of that decision back in 2016. The voters rejected a member of the Supreme Court. And so we think that this is a simpler and more direct process that will be approved by the courts and then approved by the voters.
Okay, let's turn to Mr. LaHood. What is the process now for getting this on the ballot, and can it be done in time for the 2026 elections, which are the next big elections coming around?
The process will be to collect 400,000 or 500,000 signatures, which will enable us to put this constitutional amendment on the ballot in May. We submit the petitions to the State Board of Election. They review them. We need about 360,000. We'll collect far more than that. Present them to the State Board of Election. So the deadline for submitting those to the State Board of Election is May of 2026 for consideration by the voters in November of 2026. A constitutional amendment that says that a commission will be appointed by the state legislators, and it will include 4 state legislators, but it will include a total of 12 members, 8 of which will be citizens from Illinois.
12 members, 8 citizens from Illinois, plus the 4 legislators. Is that what you're
Correct.
saying? Okay. And so to both of you, I guess we start with Mr. Daley. Why now? And if you can just kind of describe what is the problem that we're trying to fix by doing this.
You teed it up at the beginning, Peter. Yeah. It is the fact that both Democrat and Republicans over the years in Springfield, when the Republicans had majority, they did the same thing the Democrats did. Whether they did it as well or not, that can be debated. But this idea of picking your voters to maintain control, whichever party it is, that's the reason. Now, again, and you teed up the discussion today about all of the discussions going on in America right now around redistricting. This would continue to affect after the 2030 census, the legislature after that. If the voters pass this in 26, which we will believe it will, commission would be established, but it would not take effect except for the redistricting that would be done after 2030. This is not one of those attempts to try to, in the middle of the decade, throw the thing up for grabs and change it. So there's a process. It's needed, no doubt about it. And one of the main reasons we have this polarization, because the majority of members, when we can talk about the legislature here and in other states, only worry about their primaries, and the primaries bring out a very small number of Illinoisans who vote in the primaries, and they're usually either on the Democratic side, the far left, on the Republican side, the far right. We think if there's more competition in general elections, you will get more people engaged and a better balance of the type of legislators and their interests that will reflect the voters of Illinois.
And Peter, let me just put a little cap on that. We're not talking about congressional districts. We're talking about state representatives in Illinois and state senators. So we're talking about state legislative districts. It seems that the public may have a high interest in this based on all of the publicity around what's going on in Texas with redistricting. That is for congressional districts, and same is true in California. Ours would be asking the people for allowing the citizens to have their say in drawing maps that are contiguous and compact. This is being done in several other states, including our neighboring state of Iowa. And people in those states where they have citizens drawing maps are not complaining about districts that don't reflect where the people live.
Okay, so hypothetically, if this system were in place now, how do you think the Illinois General Assembly would look different than it does now? Democrats currently have super majorities in both chambers, which in Illinois is a 3/5 or 60% majority. Would the General Assembly look significantly different than it does now? And would policy look different? The policy coming out of the General Assembly, would that look different than it does now?
You know, my opinion is nobody really knows. Okay? People predicted when California went to a commission that the Republicans would gather all sorts of new districts and minorities would be pushed out. It didn't happen. Democrats got more seats and there were more minorities. The voters in the end do make the difference and make the decision. So one can conjecture they think it won't be 3/5. What will it be? Nobody really knows. what we want is to be a fairer map. Does that mean a more Democratic or Republican map? Nobody really knows, but the expectation would be it would be different, but hopefully more fairer. And the policy changes, my opinion, that would come if you have members who are less concerned about just winning their primary, and they have to appeal to the voters that come out in the general election, which is the vast majority of a much larger number, pardon me, of voters that come out in a general election, then they have to be more moderate probably in their positions. Can't just be the primary voters that you worry about anymore.
Peter, let me go back to what I said before.
Sure.
If you talk to people in Iowa and you look at the districts in Iowa, they're compact and contiguous. They're not splitting up neighborhoods. They're not splitting up communities. They're not splitting up counties. These maps are reflective of where people live and having their friends and neighbors as their representatives. And the same is true in California. If you look at the state legislative maps in California, they're compact and contiguous. And so I think in states where they have citizens drawing the maps and keeping friends and neighbors together, the voters are pretty happy.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that this is only about state legislative maps, not congressional maps. And it has been congressional maps that have been all over the news in recent weeks. Why are you only looking at legislative maps? Why not look at the way congressional district maps are drawn? Because if you look at the congressional map of Illinois,
Well,
it's just as crazy as any other state. Yeah.
Peter, you got to remember, the Illinois legislature does the congressional maps, but we don't have under the Constitution, we can't make that change. There's talk about the Illinois Constitution, we could not. But a different legislature would draw a different, possibly congressional map after 2030. So it is the legislature that's got the authority to do that on the congressional side. But we believe, our lawyers believe, that we don't have the ability under this Constitution to do that. And so we're just focused on the state house and trying to get a more reflective of the state and a fairer process to help the voters.
Mr. LaHood, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, no, no, Bill nailed it.
Okay.
The Constitution doesn't allow us to do anything except state house and state senate.
Okay. And that's all the time we have for this edition of Capital Cast. I want to thank my two guests, Bill Daley and Ray LaHood, for being here. Capital Cast is a production of Capital News Illinois, a public affairs reporting project of the Illinois Press Foundation, with funding from the Robert R. McCormick Foundation. Until next time, on behalf of the entire Capital News Illinois team, this is Peter Hancock saying thank you for being here.